Aloha, and welcome to another episode of the Groundswell Origins podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin, and today I'm the guest. I actually have my good friend, Tyler Chisholm, who I've been recording a couple episodes on his podcast and interviewing him, and he was kind enough to return the favor. And so this 2-hour episode, we cover off what I've been up to, the community that we're building called Groundswell Origins, groundswellinnercircle.com, my podcast, season 4, and the release of my book, Groundswell, The Unseen Wave of Business Growth. So without further ado, let's paddle in. The tables have turned. I am the guest on my own show, and I've brought on someone who I've had multiple conversations over the span of a decade, if not more, and we've been working together. And Tyler Chisholm, he's a respected individual in the tech industry, and you run an incredible agency. We've worked together. We've built brand stuff together. Like, we've done so much. So he's like the perfect person to be interviewing me. So without further ado, I'm handing the keys over to you. There you go.
Thank you, my friend. It's an absolute honor and a privilege. And in true Groundswell fashion, I'll start off by saying aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Aloha.
I couldn't get the swan songs. We have known each other forever. We actually, even to the point of doing, I think, a 5-hour road trip to go see a client in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. Like, we know each other that well.
That's right. That was that ag client.
It was.
We did a cool pitch for them.
We did. Absolutely. Yeah. We built it live in the room. We spent 5 hours in the car driving there, spent 5 hours workshopping with them. And you and I spent 5 hours back and got back 10 o'clock at night. And we had one of those days. So we have that in our history.
I do remember that now. Oh, good memory. I was thinking about a Honda, where when I started working with film production. And we did a commercial that they still were running. I think I just saw it last season or something.
They've been running that. What was that? 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, we did that.
Was
that the one in?
I should have sold it as a licensing agreement.
Oh, well, that's a much bigger conversation about maybe some of the opportunities and challenges around working in the creative space. And when you give away that piece of creative that then the client uses for the next 5 or 8, they've been running that. That was the snowblower commercial we shot in the middle of summer in Mount Royal. It was 30 degrees, and your team through Joe Media at the time put together fake snow. You would never know that was shot in one of the warmest days in Calgary in the middle of August. If it's the one we're talking about,
yeah. And do you remember it was 15 seconds, I think. It was. So the amount of content we had to compress, and so my solution for it was, what is that movie, Snatch? That where the sequence where the guy goes to England. That was the impetus. How do we cram in all that information in 15 seconds?
And that's funny. I didn't know that was the driver behind it. Of course, I've used that in so many presentations because it gets so much information across and a clean storyline in 15 seconds. And that is incredibly hard to do as anyone who's worked in this space at all already.
Is the commercial still live on YouTube or something?
Absolutely it is. Yeah. Well, it's live. Okay. It's on our Clear Motive channel, but they're still running it consistently as part of their buys. They've been running that for 8 years. 7 or 8 years. Yeah, that was a fantastic.
You're welcome, Honda. And
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Scott Martin. Scott, hey,
we've established my sustainable growth marketing.
It strikes again. So, hey, this is about you. So you're fantastic at asking the questions and engaging because you're a phenomenal host. I love your show. How long have you been doing your podcast for? How many years?
It's been 5 years, even though I'm in season 4.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, because I've lapsed. Sometimes I'll lag a little bit. And over the 5 years, it's kind of caught up to a year.
Okay, got it.
That makes sense.
And if my homework is correct, 67 episodes you've done over the period of 5 years. Is that correct? Is that where you're at?
I think I'm at 72 right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know why I clicked on it. I had 60. I wrote 67 in my notes. But
maybe I have them in production. They haven't been released yet.
Okay, perfect. Well, which as a fellow podcaster, the queue is a real thing, and how long between the record and the go live. So you've got the podcast, you've been going on for 5 years. How long did you start Groundswell? Did you move? Because you've got a bit of an eclectic past in the world of marketing and business, which we'll touch on. But when did Groundswell come to be?
Groundswell came to be after I left working at a company called Direct Focus. Okay. I was working with Joe Media. That's where you and I really got to know each other. And that's my first, I think after 12, 15 years, my first job as an employee. And they were amazing. Matt's insanely cool. I love the experience, but I'm not an employee. And then I got offered a really, really lucrative job to run Direct Focus, which I later regretted, but I learned a lot from it. It really, what it did for me was one simple thing. It just anchored the salty taste of I need to work for myself. And that's when I started Groundswell. So it's been around for like, I don't know, 6 years now,
Fantastic.
6, 7 years.
Just touching on that, pulling on that thread a bit, what was, everyone finds their path to entrepreneurship and, solopreneurship or building a company. There's so many different layers, which we'll talk about a little bit around, kind of purpose. But that salty taste, what was it about for you that was a biggest driver to be like, this is not for me? Like this, the inability to do, or the expectation around, what were some of the things that really drove you? Because you left being the guy running his own show, going, to have a quote unquote job, and then back to it because you just couldn't deal with it. I'm just curious a little bit of the psychology around that. And what was it for you that just didn't work?
Well, I think life on your own terms is probably the first thing that comes to mind, like stand here, do this, be here for, and but then that's a total joke because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm still doing that. I mean, I'm still working crazy hours, but it's you, right? Um, Probably the biggest thing is delivery of client on your own terms, meaning the standard that you want to set for the type of work you want to do, the type of clients you want to serve, the environment you want to create. I wanted to create it on my own terms. I didn't want to be like, I felt like I kept on subjugating my creative thinking and
Mm.
solutions because there was a political reason. And I'm like, this makes no sense.
This is quote unquote ridiculous. And you went from running your own thing, you went to the job side of the world, and then went back. Did you just need a reminder, or was that just part of the journey? I always appreciate the origin stories of, yeah, I did my own thing. I went, tested the waters, reminded me all the reasons why I need to do my own thing. I came back to re-energized and with a fresh set of purpose of what that is.
Well, a little backstory in that was I had SDMG, my agency,
Mhm.
for 10 years. I
Yep.
sold it. And when I sold it, I thought I was done with marketing.
Ah,
And when
okay,
I
right on.
and I had my film production company, so I was really loving producing content, photography, video, backcountry snowboarding. It got me into powder and having a ball of fun and creating content, and I just mastered content activation and stuff. But um, I left that company when I sold it, and I just realized that I didn't love managing people. I'm
Okay,
a good
right on.
leader, but I don't love the day-to-day grind of the people problems that took me away from creative or just marketing, and I love marketing, and I fell out of love of it, and that to me was
Mm.
sort of like what happened. I went into a lull. I just did yoga for a year. I just hung out my hammock and snowboarded all the time, and then,
Sounds
when I met
horrible, man. Sounds horrible.
well, I was kind of
You
in a
son, you
tunnel. I was
son of
kinda
a
wasn't
bitch.
sure what I
Yeah.
wanted to
So,
do,
yeah.
and Jill's like, "Hey, you should probably work." I started dating Jill, and that's why I decided, I'm really liking the film production. I wonder if TV commercials are for me, 'cause that's the last
That
thing
was
I
the
had never done.
parlay into
I did
Joe Media.
everything in marketing but that, and then I was like, "Yeah, that's good." I'm I mean, I feel like I
Yep,
learned it.
good.
I don't love the production of the TV commercials. There's so much riding on it. Um,
It
I realized what I love as I kind of go back to this is direct to consumer, or direct to business, ongoing relationships where relationships are highly valued. Those type of things where personalization and deeper, meaningful relationships can be created is where I found my magic, not rapid transactional type of business sales
yeah,
and marketing.
yeah. High volume campaigns, deadlines, grind it out, the
I've
next
done so
meet
many
the
of
next sales.
those, and it's it feels like a treadmill.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit in your book because your book kind of goes in the opposite direction of
Oh yeah.
that. So you talk a lot in your book, and I know you, so I love the terminology around epic outcome, epic center. Uh, when you started Groundswell, what was your epic outcome, and how much has that changed or shifted over the years, or has it refined, or has it been 180 because you've learned new things?
It's funny. My epic outcome was to have no employees and to make money on my own terms and as much as I can and do whatever I wanted. That was my outcome. But seriously, I wanted
Love
no
it.
employees, and I did that for like 4 years.
Yeah,
Remember, you and I've talked about it.
we
I was
have
like,
at length, at length.
because I constantly could have had the opportunity to grow as an agency and add more people, and I was like so dead against it. So my outcome was to be the ultimate solopreneur. And I did. I achieved it. I got 7 figures by myself. That's a lot. That's a pretty big accomplishment for a
Mhm.
solopreneur. Just doing brand strategy. That's to me is something I can hang on my hat on. But I realize if I'm really going to make a difference, and I want to make an impact, I want to make change in the world. I need to actually have other people come along.
I appreciate that. So that epic center or that epic outcome, it has shifted from what I'm hearing because you kind of met the first tier of it, which then allowed you to go, okay, and I heard to have impact and to have drive and to do that, I need more people. So it sounds like it's shifting under your feet, or it has.
It really it's about mission. So
Okay.
that's because of Tony Robbins. It's like initially it was my mission, me being financially free, secure, life on my own terms.
Mhm.
And then I jumped in this Tony Robbins bubble and doing this plat and all the training I've been doing with him. And I realized in that journey that it's about impact and that marketing businesses that are trying to do good, marketing is an important fuel for their business. It's the lifeblood that really is a difference maker. And I saw these patterns of these businesses that want to make impact, and I saw this as an opportunity to make a mission. And that's to me is applying my marketing for good. No more
the,
moving junk, right?
the best missions are the simplest. Talk to us about tell me about the Tony Robbins journey. I've always been amazed at this, kind of watching it from the outside, and you give me updates along the way. How long have you been? And I guess has Tony Robbins always been in your life? And I say that very, very, very affectionately. I remember Personal Power. I had the cassettes. I listened to them. Tony Robbins has been Tony Robbins for a long time, but you kind of got really serious about your Tony Robbins relationship a few years ago.
Well, if my origin story of it is, I first got exposed to Tony Robbins. Won't go into deep dive in this, but I got deported from the island of Cayman Islands, and I'm in the airport in Miami with $80 in my pocket, and ended up buying a Tony Robbins book. That was my first time being exposed to him. Awaken the Giant Within blew my mind. I totally went into a deep dive of, I think, I mean, I just as a because I know we're on camera here, I'm grabbing these cue cards. I read about a book a week, if not more, and I'd make notes, highlight them, and then write out the actual quotes in them. And I have a file,
Nice.
like a whole cabinet full of these. My wife found these. She's like, "What is this?" And I explained how much I read. It was after that book. So he really had a big impact. And then I didn't really do much with him. Listened to his cassettes when I started SDMG. That really gave me a boost. And then I just kind of forgot about it.
Mm.
And one day I saw this thing on Netflix called "I'm Not Your Guru," and I was like, that Tony Robbins thing, maybe I should do one once in a lifetime event. I'll do one event and I'll get these tickets with my wife and we'll go to LA, and we did this event. And that's as I recount in my book is when I was uh, just compelled to tell anyone that would listen that this was the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And that
I remember. I
pattern,
think I
as
think I
I've
was on that
repeated
list.
in
I think
the
you and
book,
I had a coffee date right after you got back from that, or right very closely after.
I must have been difficult to talk to because I was just like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever.
Scott, you were enthusiastic. It's one things I love. It's one things I love. You were both guilty when we're enthusiastic about something. We love to tell people about it. So when I've learned over the years is when someone else is in that state, just let them have that space and enjoy it because it's awesome.
We've had many excited conversations,
We
and
have.
you're someone I could totally tell that with. I mean, I think in that situation, it could be like being born again, as some people, are like, "Oh my God, I'm born again." It felt that way to a degree because it opened my eyes.
Yeah, I love that.
Felt a huge shift, and I realized that I need to become better.
Hmm. I had a friend a few years ago try to call me out on the fact that, like, Tyler, like, I was telling him about some new thing I was excited about. It was some nutrition or exercise. It was something like personal. And he's like, yeah, but everything you find is the next best thing. I'm like, yeah, isn't that the point? Isn't that a life well lived? But he was trying to knock it down. Like, well, yeah, but last time you said it was awesome. Like, yeah, but I learned that, and now I've learned something new, and it's equally as awesome. And I still remember we're good friends, so I'm saying it with all due respect. But he was trying to like demean it a little bit. Like, yeah, it's just another thing you're excited about. I'm like, yeah, that's accurate. But like, I don't understand why you're trying to make that position as a negative. So I don't know.
As
I've
opposed
wrestled
to
with
not
that
being
over the years.
excited about something?
Completely. I don't know. Like, oh, I thought the last thing was the best. I'm like, it was until I learned this new thing, and I'm building. Anyways, it was just an interesting. I find out people, and you and I think center around that of like, yeah, the next thing, it's like David Ogilvy. What's your best project? My next one. What are you excited about? Well, here's what I'm working on, but man, who knows what's coming around the corner? That sense of anticipation and hope and energy, there's a lot of power created from that, I think. And I see you doing that in everything that you do.
I lean into it. The more I learn, the more I want to be better.
Yeah, it's addicting, isn't it? I love it.
It is. Yeah. And I realize how
So,
much I suck.
oh, if anything's worth being good at, it's worth sucking at initially. My mutual, my
Well,
business partner,
like
who
my
you
first
also
book,
know,
you
says
and I were
that.
just talking about it. I'm like, I mean, I don't want to downplay my book because this is about my
I
book.
don't
I'm
be
like,
that guy. Don't be the guy that writes this book and then
yeah,
shits on it because he already wants to write a better one. Because it's a pretty good book, man. We're
my
going to talk
next
about
book's
it here
going
in
to
a
be
second.
better. Yeah.
Of course it is, man. I joke. Remember shop class? Remember home ec or
Yeah.
any of those classes where you make the thing and you make the second one? It's always better the second time, but you got to go through the learning process. And
Everybody
the
says
risk
your
is
first book, you
people
learn how to write a
shying
book.
away. Yeah, no doubt. Well,
Yeah.
let's get into it. Like the audience is like, okay, the book. This is a kickoff to your next season of the show. You're launching your book. Talk to us about the book. Give us the elevator. We're in the elevator, Scott. You and I've run into each other. Haven't seen you for a year. Scott, I heard you wrote a book. Boom. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm not
Like you son of a bitch.
where do I begin? How much time do we have? 15 seconds?
Got 2 hours, man. We got 2 hours.
Yeah.
We can push stop on the elevator. Mhm.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing is this is a very contrarian book. It's the exact opposite of what most marketing, typical marketing approaches are. And this book isn't for everybody. This book is about really for people that are looking to make impact. I call them impact creators. And what's unique about this book is it's about patterns. All it is really I've identified a pattern overlaid into a backdrop of my mentor Don Peppers, who had a framework for building get, grow, keep. He's known as the one of the top minds in personalization, and I used that for years. And these two overlays of patterns is what I identified in nature as well. And that's why I built my framework of build, give, grow, transform. And that to me is like the life cycle, the perfect life cycle of creating sustainable growth. So this book is really about sustainable growth marketing. And I don't believe it's the only book that'll ever be published about sustainable growth marketing. I believe there's going to be multiple methods for doing this. Groundswelling or building a groundswell is just going to be one of them. And that's what this
Mhm.
book's about.
I appreciate that. I read it, and honestly, I wouldn't give it to somebody and say, "Here's a marketing book." I'm not sure what I would say, but if this wasn't a book about marketing, what would you? How would you? What category? If you were going to pick a shelf to put it on we'll go to chapters. Why not go old school? You're going to put it in a section. Does it go in the business section? Does it go in the philosophy section? Does it go in sustainability? Does it go in self improvement? I feel this book treads in a few different categories.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people find themselves. A lot of the work that I do when I'm doing branding, they come for I call it the chocolate shake. They want leads. They want more business. They leave with the green shake. And that's why the book is called The Unseen Wave of Business Growth. The truth is the unseen wave is you. It's your enthusiasm, the congruency of your values, the epic outcome, and the congruency of what you want to do to make an impact in the world. You have infinite amount of energy. And when you do, it's funny how the universe and the rest of the world falls behind that. When the
Mhm.
energy, that's why I use the storm analogy. The origin of a storm is this chaotic storm. If everyone's seen Castaway, the waves are going every which direction. Initially, it's quite chaotic, but when a wave goes in a storm goes in the same sustained direction, what happens is these chaotic waves start collecting and forming and becoming partners, and it's almost joining up, and they start creating these lines. There's more surface area. It creates exponential growth, and then what happens is it keeps building and it grows until the ocean floor sort of changes and it transforms into waves. And you see these long lines from the air, these like corduroy lines. They're very powerful. Wind swell is kind of being be very choppy. You can still have lots of waves, but this is very different. It's like from the ocean floor all the way to the ocean is like it's a very powerful, radiant experience. And I view that as being like an uprising. If you think of an uprising, like Black Lives Matter, that was a movement, but it started as a movement. How many times have we heard of movements? I'm not saying this one is like this, but movements and they kind of go away. The pink ribbon campaign, that's a movement that has a little bit of energy to it. That's like brands. moving from one brand to the next. We're moving transactions.
Mhm.
But the next change is change, which is when we actually, Black Lives Matter wanted to make change. That's the next level of a groundswell. But it's not even to stop there about changing the way that people think. It's actually to transform human interactions. It's about transformation, the journey. Those are the three stages. So that pattern in waves, move, change, transform, is also transformational design. When I heard a quote from Tony Robbins, life's happening for me, it moves me. When I hear music, it moves me. Tell the world about it. When you go to buy an ice cream or you step over one brand to get the next, you don't tell the world about it. You just do it. But when a brand changes you from a PC to a Mac, or from a Right Guard user to Old Spice, and you love it, you'll probably do word of mouth. Hey, I like this product. It's better. That's where most people live, that emotional, functional state in business. But when you could go to the next level. But I read his book in the airport when I was 19 or 20, whatever it was. That changed me, and I did talk about it. But when I went into his event, and it transformed my life, I wouldn't shut up about it. And when you see other businesses that transform the customer experience, or you're creating a movement for change and you're looking at transforming the world, people are compelled to tell the people about it. Look at Patagonia. Like it's a groundswell that's just keeps on growing and moving by the very direction he's continuing with the very origin story of what his outcome is going to be, which is to make it a business for good for the planet. That is the great example of like how you build a groundswell.
I love it. Well, so much to unpack there. How important was it for you in the role that, I'm going to call it the natural world, but nothing demonstrates the natural world like spending time in the ocean. As a land dweller, when you put yourself in that environment, the humility, the vulnerability, the power, the awe, the spiritual experience that you can have, how much, because when I'm listening to you talk, this is so much more of an organic, transformational experience around a brand, or the potential for that. Like, that's what we're excited for, and that's what we're looking at to capture. How important was it for you to tie that back to the ocean, and because I know your relationship with the ocean has been powerful your whole life, but man, that's transformative. Like those spiritual, like I'm going to use the word spiritual very openly, that you can have in the ocean. That it's unique. And I've not been growing up as a surfer, have spent some time out in the ocean, and I've got rocked physically, psychologically a bunch of times. Just I'm fishing a bit, but to me that feels like such a tie-in to what we're now trying to bring into this world of communicating and building companies.
Well, it's funny to say that. First of all, I love surfing, and so I had to find some way to tie it in. But it just
It's
so
on
happened
brand,
it
man. It's on
worked,
brand for sure.
and but if you look at nature, here's what I'd say to you. Any business that's grown, does it grow in a straight line? No.
No.
And no straight lines exist in nature.
Hmm.
If you look at nature as a guide for sustainable growth, then it works in an ecosystem. It works naturally. It fills in spaces that no different, like think of them like markets. It's like if you really study nature, it can give you so much guidance, and even to that end, the universe, spirituality, energy. So I've been exploring those other aspects in like what's possible in terms of how could it affect business. And Tony Robbins talks about business as a spiritual journey. What you're describing in that book is a spiritual journey. It's how to go from being just a business to making money to how can I feel great and stoked about what I do to make an impact on the world. And so look at nature. And to
Hmm.
me, the waves, the power of the waves, the exponential nature of waves was just a great metaphor to help people sort of piece this together and in a way that I could describe it because I'm so intimate with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's why that's connected so well.
And it shows up and it pulls together so naturally throughout the book. Maybe we all have. I've read books where they tried a bit too hard to do that and tie it to something external where it didn't land. And your book took on a very natural flow. Talk to us a little bit about the writing, because I read this in the last couple of days. So I plowed through this. I was like, got to read Scott's book before. I wanted to read it, but it's one of those kept putting it off. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, the day is coming. I'm doing the podcast. So I plowed through it, really enjoyed it, really felt very authentic to the person that I know to be you. But I also respect the amount of work and energy and time and commitment. having it all boiling around inside and then being able to push it out into what is now 300 plus pages, that's no easy task. So talk to us a little bit about maybe the journey and just the mechanics of how you made that happen in what is, I know, a super busy life as well.
Yeah, I was running a business all this time and traveling on the world with Tony Robbins at the same time and so on. Um, you know, I would say that so it took 3 years. The first 2 years was kind of figuring out what I wanted to say and how to say it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like get my
Yeah,
thoughts
totally.
clear. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I'll take away is writing the book and is to clear my thoughts. It's more clear. When I'm verbalizing it now, I'm so clear about it. I'm certain
Mm.
about it. I've been testing these over those 3 years. I didn't want to just go, this is theory. A lot of those things I've been doing for years, by the way. Like none of it's theory. All of it's like I've been applying. But I was really
Totally.
applying the methodology in that order. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Don Peppers, get, grow, keep. If you think of how do you get customers, how do you grow customers, how you keep customers, that's how I built all of the campaigns I've ever done for years and the progression of that. And tell me this isn't true for you. How many times have the client coming to your agency and gone, I've got this great product, it's amazing. Spend all their money on product, but never even thought about how they're going to market it, budget, who their audience is and stuff. And I always thought that was really backwards.
Well, it's a very common conversation. I can't deny that for sure.
And and I see the future of being, I have this audience. I already know who to talk to. They have this problem. I just need to be able to connect with them. And I call it digging a well before you're thirsty. I also
Mhm.
call this as a great way for people to think about marketing and how to save money and time. They just are doing a huge gamble investment on a hypothesis that they're trying to market. So they spend advertising dollars working with an agency to help them do it. I'm like, well, what if you built an audience? You tested those ideas, then you go spend money and actually market it once you know that there's a need there, for example, or you already know who to talk to. Because as you know, the biggest cost of marketing is who do we talk to and how do we reach them?
Yeah, totally.
So to me, that build phase is probably the biggest thing. If you notice, did you notice that build was like almost the whole book? Like it's like
Yeah,
over
yes,
half
I
the book,
did.
right?
Yeah, I 100% did. That wasn't lost on me as well.
Yeah, and I
And
did that
and
on
and
purpose.
and give took up some weight as well.
Yeah. So the build phase, think of it like the bowstring. It's counterintuitive for an entrepreneur. You came to me for growth, Scott. I want to grow. Well, how many times have they come to you and they go, let's go, let's do a campaign? You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What matters more, direction or speed?
Well, it's 100% direction.
Right. But everybody wants
My
speed.
my
That's what they
one
come
of
for. You can accelerate it. So the bowstring going the opposite direction creates tension, but also it allows you to spring forward. And that's the build phase, is taking the time to build the audience, build your needs, build your plan. If I don't put that in there, I always find that clients want to jump to the get. How do I get customers?
Mhm.
So I felt like there had to create, if you're really going to build a groundswell, you got to build a storm. You got to build the energy. You got to like really build the intention. And the more clarity you have about the direction you storm, the better. Then the second, give.
Mhm.
Well, in today's environment, I don't think it's enough to be competitive to just, here's our offering. You're competing against people that are giving away premium models. Look at the cable companies, we'll give you a free computer if you sign up. I'm not saying you need to give away free things. It's about focusing the language. What am I giving the world? See, it's not just it's not just about product and about doing a free thing. It's about what is your give to the world? If you're going to build something of impact, what are you giving? What are you offering? Like the people want to buy more from a product than just the product. They want to know what's behind the product. If I'm going to buy these glasses and I can get the same product, and these guys are going to give 50% of the profits going to go to helping somebody create eyesight, that for me, it aligns with my values.
Mhm.
And that's what I call buy-in. When you create a give, it doesn't have to be about giving away. It's about what's your give to the world? What's your impact to the world? Um, what are you giving to actually get attention? So you said people were, doing ebooks and things of that nature. And my argument is this: if the give is like you're going to game it, I'm okay, but this is our give, Scott. I did it. It doesn't work. The give has to be slightly to the point where going, they should pay for this. This is of extreme value. This isn't important to the world. Whatever it is, if it feels that way, then it's probably a give. And that's
Mm,
the second principle. It's like a wave needs to build. It needs to give energy to start moving in the direction and then grow. Most
mm,
people think growth is about more. And it's not about growing up, it's about growing roots first, deeper
mhm,
relationships. It's like people are so quick to spend money and grow on new clients when really you should invest on existing clients because that actually will create more growth for you than you could possibly imagine. But it's patient growth, it's healthy growth, and it's a different type of growth. And to me, that's what I outlined in the book. And the last is what we described before, which was move, change, transform. If you get to that last point, which you should, and you're endeavoring to change the world, move the world, you're moving in that direction, the growth loop will exist. Meaning, I feel so good about this business. Why wouldn't I want to tell other people why they should be part of this business? If you have to acquire a new customer with marketing advertising every time you don't have a sustainable business, you have a treadmill and likely a very dangerous one that could change at any moment.
mm,
If you can turn every customer into another customer, you now have created a sustainable business. That to me, because all customers reach an end. All customers, even subscribers, at some point will have an attrition. But your goal is to have people feel compelled to bring other people, and there's a benefit for them. So you think of Dropbox and different examples of growth loops. The growth loop that I think is the most powerful is when you're making impact. And that's really what this book is about is reshaping the way that we think about how business can be more of a spiritual journey and we can create fulfillment for ourselves while we're still being successful.
I love it. Let's back it up because we kind of pulled through and you
I
kind of
know I
wrapped it
went
all
through a
together.
long rant there.
You did. No, it's all good, man. It's all good. It's your book. It's your show. It's your world. I'm just living in it. Isn't that the comment? Let's talk a little bit about build and I'm going to put on my agency hat for a minute and think about some agencies that I would be surprised if some agencies didn't pick up that book, especially smaller agencies. You get a client that shows up and they're like, I've already got my product figured out. I've already got it figured out. I actually don't want to pay for, nor do I even want to do any of that. And there's easy to say, well, don't work with that client. But a lot of times, and I know you've been in the same meeting that I have been in many, many times in my career of like, well, yeah, if you guys want to do some thinking on that, you just do that on your own time. We just want you to go and sell our product. And I'm talking about it very black and white because it is a phenomenon that happens. And then what's your thoughts on how you approach that around the build phase when that company has shown up and respecting to them have put in a lot of time and a lot of energy to what they think is the quote unquote right solution for this potentially customer group that they haven't tested or that they don't even have yet. How do you navigate that conversation? Because that's a bit tricky. And I want to be respectful to the client because they believe they've done that work. And let's
Mhm.
start with that as maybe a prerequisite for just saying, they don't know what they're doing. They do.
Yeah, I call it the active strategy. Let's
Okay.
work on the strategy and we'll at the same time apply what you've learned and the direction you've got, and that'll inform this strategy. It's like a
Okay.
trial balloon. That's why my image of a book is a trial balloon, is active
Hmm.
strategy. It gets you out of that loop with the client
Okay.
and it also gives you real information. In fairness to the client, if you go into build phase too much, it's like I don't want to be like how many clients are gonna let you plan for as long as I'd love them to plan? Hardly
Okay.
any. But a
No.
trial balloon, a active strategy going, okay, we're going to test these components. We're going to
Mm.
take action so it can apply to cash flow and inform this, but we're going to build more in the background. That has you two horses in the race. So it's thinking short and long. It's thinking fast and slow.
Yeah, I really like that. And I would say, or would you agree that just the technology that we now have access to allows us to do that in a way and a scope and a scale that we never had access to even 5 or 10 years ago.
Absolutely. I think that your ability to test your hypothesis and create models that will compel clients to take the time it needs to get it right, going back to what's more important, direction or speed, then I think you can make a case. If they're belligerently not interested, then it would go back
Good
to
word.
I would do
Good
your
use of the word
origin.
belligerent.
It's true, they are,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Is when I'm just hiring you, suddenly now you're in a transaction with them. That's when I say, go back to your origins. What's your outcome?
Yep.
If you aim to make impact, see, I did this. I would bend the knee and help grow rapidly. And when I realized this is what has also become this book is I'm a recovering
Hmm.
shoot, aim, person
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
that
totally.
really is
Yeah.
recovering from, "Let's just get it done."
Shoot,
I
fire,
did
aim,
it,
I think.
and I drove people off cliffs, and I realized that they were and they'd come back and go to me, "Well, here we are," and I'm like, "I told you we needed to plan to make sure or to think of these things, and no matter what in that situation, there's no coming back. You're done." So you have to be willing to prepare your business and your nerve to be able to say no.
Yes, I've heard often you're defined much more by what you say no to than what you say yes to. Let's talk about channels because you and I have talked about this before, and the world of giving up too much power to a platform or an external channel that you quote unquote become addicted to. It's like a drug dealer. They give you a sample, they give you a couple wins, and next thing you know, they have all the power. And I know you've learned some hard lessons around that. So talk a little bit philosophically because it's a trap that so many businesses fall into. Platforms make it really easy. When I talk about platforms, I talk about channels, I talk about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like pick the platform. You are getting the eyes, but you're losing control. And I know you've been bit by this one.
Oh, I got lots to say about this. So,
I thought you might.
if we think about sustainable growth marketing, what was that born from? Is also looking at what I think is an up and coming topic that we're going to hear more about, which is entrepreneurship sovereignty.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
a lot of businesses don't realize that they don't own their business. Facebook does. If Facebook went away, how would they market? Well, I would just go to the social channel. It's not always that easy. It's like the for myself, I've had I think I have over 30 groups. I mastered Facebook groups and some of them are 10,000, 5,000. I've totally just like danced around Facebook and done the dance. And what I realize is they and every other platform like them for the most part is their aim is to create a barrier between you and your audience and you to pay for it. They're not
Yeah.
working in your interest. It's it's a little bit like gambling and you don't have control. Now, I'm not anti social media or social platform or channel platform. I'm leverage it, don't rely on it. It's just know the balance. So, because what happens is when it's easy, it's like a pond. Imagine a pond that's got fish there, but there's no new fish going in, and you can just go fish there and you go, this is how it is. That creates a false positive. What happens when things change, when an ad rates change or they run out of fish?
Yeah.
So what I teach is how do you actually create a tailing pond from a river? How do you create a sustainable pond? And you learn how to fish and you have access to that pond. You need to be thinking very much more like an ecosystem than thinking in absolutes. I'm not against social media. I think it's great for awareness, but relying on it is incredibly dangerous. So the algorithm, oh, everyone's complaining about, I've got 16,000 followers on my one Facebook page and I reached like 500 maybe if I'm lucky, and I spent all these years building up that audience.
Mm.
So the promise that these platforms is that you come here, we're going to give you access to people. It's going to be easy, and people fall for it because it is
Yeah.
easy. And I'd say, you know what? There's a lot of things in life that are easy, but they're not really good for you. Some of the best things that are good for you, you got to work hard for.
I would say my experience is most things. So what alternatives or how? And I know that you like you say I love the entrepreneurial sovereignty because I've heard of
Yeah.
financial sovereignty. So I love that term. I haven't heard. I'm giving you credit for that. I was like, oh, that's my friend Scott said that. What do you recommend as an alternative? Because if someone's really listening right now, they're like, okay, great, I understand that. So what do I do now instead?
Yeah. So it's anywhere where you can have unobstructed, direct contact with your audience without any control of a platform. So when you have a service, email, for example, that's like what's long been considered the best one, right? Like it's one of
Yep.
them anyways. There's more. But just as for example, right? Or if you had someone's phone numbers, you could change providers. You can always download to the database. You could argue that that platform might screw you over, but I mean, really, if you're paying for it, it's a service. You're probably good to go. But at the same time, always keep a backup, no matter what.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the platforms, what you're going to see is, I think this is a really interesting topic about sustainable growth marketing. This is going to go deep, so you guys got to brace yourself for this one. So I believe that when you make a marketing decision in the future, it's going to be based not on just the integration, technically, it's going to be philosophical. I believe that you're going to work with founders of businesses that also leaning into, if you care about sovereignty, that they respect that. And then their DNA of their brand are going, you control your data, you have access to your customers, we promise to do these things. And there's going to be a different separation, and you're going to either pay more for it or it's just going to be different. And so, for example, I did an interview with Gina. Um, Bunk Bunkiani, I'm mispronouncing her name.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
anyways, she's the founder of Mighty Networks, and I actually asked her about all these details, and she's come out with her own manifesto from dependence to independence. She's in the same boat, so I've leaned into creating a private virtual community. This is what I believe the future is. Private virtual communities, no matter
Mhm.
if you're a niche community, the heavy metal knitting community, which is like 30,000 people, by the way. It sounds crazy, it's true. Or sustainable growth marketing,
Love it.
people that want to learn about this and go on a journey. I believe that community and platforms like this are going to be where businesses are going to have sustainable. It's like the new open CRM. So instead of your database in the
Right.
back, your database. See, if I send a bunch of emails, I get my email, but I don't know that 15,000 people are watching that email. But in a community, you're like, oh wow, and there's some comments, and it can build on itself. So to me, when you create a partnership in the future, it's not going to just be tech stack. It's going to be interoperability with philosophy.
Interesting. And is that also piggybacking on maybe there's always a backlash of, our concerns around privacy. We gave it up so quickly. Now we all of a sudden realize the price we're paying for that as a consumer. And now we are looking for more depth, even the past 3 years. And not to bring up COVID, but so many people felt disconnected and felt not part of their community because they lost the physicality of it. So they looked for it in other areas. And that ability or that need for us to actualize at a little bit of a deeper level really makes sense that the companies that help fill that are going to be the ones that win in the long run.
It's funny you'd say that. That's the topic of my next book. So
Nice. That was
high
not a
time
plan to anyone. That was natural. That occurred naturally.
is it's basically the idea of this. I believe we're leaving. This is a hopeful story, by the way. We're
Love it.
leaving the age of attention and we're moving into the age of trust. And I'll explain. I call this the tidal shift. We're in the middle, we're in between tides right now. That soupy mess between the ocean doesn't know which direction it is, and it's very problematic and directionless. It got accelerated with COVID, and I'll explain how. When we went through COVID, we were kind of we put our elbows in and we didn't know who to trust, and we're kind of like we're filled with fear. And when we do that in life, what do we tend to do? We tend to turn to family and friends, people we
Yep.
trust with information in any situation, whether you're in a wartime situation or that or anything personal. And so if you think of that, we've been bombarded with fake news, fake information, bad marketing. Think of the last time you saw a trailer for a movie that you were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to watch this." And then 15 minutes in, you're like, what am I doing? You just totally bait and switch me. This is the worst movie of all time, or worse, you watched the whole thing. So now you don't trust the movie, the reviews, marketers, right? Then so what do you do next? I'm going to go to I may have watched the trailer. Then I go to the reviews. Those are peer reviews. Well, those get kind of gamed. And then you kind of like watch one that got 4 stars, but clearly it was teenagers. So your tribe didn't like that. People like you, if you shared your values, didn't like that. So now you go to, who do I know? Right? Hey, you know what kind of you and I have to share the same values. What are you watching? What are you so now you'll take the recommendation and usually it's great. It's very personalized. We're moving back to where we are going to go to trusted circles for decision making. And I believe that this is going to affect business in a profound way and is very exciting for businesses that are leaning in how to become businesses of trust. And think of blockchain. Why does blockchain exist? Is to remove the need for trust. Why do we
Irrefutable.
have business, money, and
Yeah.
trust? Because boy, we don't trust each other. So Web3 is all about this. So this is what I believe is really exciting about my book and the next progression of what's happening is I think businesses that really embrace the idea of what Don Peppers calls extreme trust. And here's the example. I'm on Apple and I go to buy a song, and pops up. It goes, "Oh, you've already bought it." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Apple. You could have made millions of dollars on me being apathetic, but you embedded in the business as a rule, as a philosophy, as a point of business brand promise. No, we're gonna let them know that they don't need to pay for that trice. They could be making probably $1 billion on just that brand mistake, if you will, but they thought differently. This is creates more trust. More trust means more transactions. The less I pay attention, and my guard goes down because there's trust there. Think of that as a simplified way that how businesses need to create trust early and quickly in ways so that we are all naturally got our elbows up and mistrusting. And so I think the rise of community and culture are such an important one because we trust people that we're in a cultural relationship inside a business or outside, or communities of trust.
Mhm. I really see that. I agree with you, and I'm just thinking about every janky product code that didn't work, or some site I was on that I was almost about to purchase, and then the deal all of a sudden disappeared or it froze, and then immediately you feel like you're being gamed, and it's this such a dirty feeling compared to your example, Apple example. But what
Think
I
of
also
ClickFunnels.
see, yep, completely, it's totally,
The minute you're in a ClickFunnel, you know you're in a ClickFunnel.
yeah,
So what do you
totally.
feel? You feel transactional. You almost anticipate what they're saying next. Oh, here comes the clock. Here's the recommendation. Here's the countdown. I only got 3 minutes or this offer goes away. It's like we've gone to this like pushing people's adrenalines on attention and putting
Oh yeah,
fear in
yeah, yeah.
people, and I think
Quick.
people are over it. And I think it's going the other way. I think for marketers that lean into grabbing your attention and doing the bait and switch, all that stuff is gonna come to its end.
What if this also does, like, let's, this is 100% true. We'll go with that, which I agree. There's going to be time and there's going to be hiccups and everyone gets to it at a different journey. But this is also such a time when you see transformation in industries where large established organizations struggle because they're so addicted to the clickbait switch, click, adrenaline, serotonin hit. When you've got new companies that come in and disrupt entire sectors because they're able and willing and able to do it differently. And I think that's where you see those amazing transformational shifts where companies we all can tell the Blockbuster story, the Kodak story, or every company. It's such great examples of companies that had every opportunity to stay in the lead, but they couldn't get out of their own way. So what gets me excited is the change that comes out of these philosophical shifts that you're talking about, which I agree with.
It's about being brave. You see in my book
Mhm.
where I talked about the research from the 30 years of research of
Mhm.
brand activation and sales activation, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Talking about the brands, right? Like, so brand over time, when you're really investing in this, if you're not going quarter to quarter, like campaign to campaign, you're going, is this serve our customer even though we don't make as much money? We're banking trust with them. Think of I think of the local company, TELUS. They actually had an offer for a new customer, and I saw it and I'm like, that's half what I'm paying, and I've been with them for 5 years.
Yes.
Think about that. Is that creating trust? Sure, it's short-term moving customers, but for me, I kind of feel like, and I did phone them, by the way, and I got a good rate, but, I had to fight for it.
But they're kind
But
of
to
bargaining
me,
on how many people don't call, right? That's the algorithm, and
this
that's
is
that you
marketing.
believe that. Yeah,
Marketing puts
100%.
all the value up front.
Mhm.
It was the best it was the minute you paid for it, and it gets worse. And so groundswelling is the opposite. It should always be better. Tell me you have a relationship. Like, I feel like you and me, the longer we know each other, the more I like you because we just have it's like wine, right? Like, it just gets better, right? Like, we trust each other
And
more.
it
We
gets more depth and more body and more flavorful.
totally, right? So why
Yep.
shouldn't a business be that way? If you
Mhm.
architect and design thinking in those terms and you reinvest, that's where the grow chapter is in. You deepen your relationships. Don't try to go after new acquisition. You'll create more acquisition.
That's the one quote. I've got so many quotes written down in front of me, but patience isn't knowing, isn't waiting. Patience is knowing. I think it was Guru Singh. I think that
Guru
who what that
saying,
was.
yeah,
I love that. I'd never heard that one before, and I love it because oftentimes, oh, I'm not patient. We got to go fast, But patient isn't waiting. Patience is knowing. I
it's
love that
not
on so many
passive.
levels. Yeah,
It's when
no,
you
it's very
know.
active. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to instill with this book is that if you read this, you'll get a knowing, and you will not be moved to the short-term thinking. This is the enemy of most people in marketing is short-term thinking in business. Think of
Well,
every bad
and
decision is usually a short-term one.
And if you look at it, certainly in publicly traded companies, there's a huge argument, and you go down the Simon Sinek road about fixed versus flexible and long term versus short term. When you're being pounded with quarterly results, when you look at the movement to shareholder value over customer value, and there's lots of research around this, versus true capitalism often gets pointed at as the enemy. Where fundamentally, if you look at capitalism of like we grow, we reinvest, we hire more people, like it is more of a cyclical. But as soon as we started focusing on number one shareholder returns over all else, you're right. You can't. It is short term thinking at its best or and its worst.
Think of your people. How many times do your people, their guts wrench because they're compromising. They're going, the right thing to do would be this. What does
Yeah.
that do for the culture? But when you shift it, when they're going, you think of Zappos. There's a story of Zappos where he's sitting there in a pizza or in a bar, and this lady goes, "We need pizza," and she goes, "Oh, I'm going to call my Zappos representative," and he's the founder, and he's listening to this. Did you hear the story?
No, I haven't. I know.
Okay, so he's sitting there, he's hearing the story, and she phones and goes, I want to get ordered 5, pepperoni pizzas." She goes, "Well, ma'am, we're Zappos." She goes, "Yeah, but you're supposed to make me happy." And so I guess there's like a pause or something. She goes, "Okay, let me phone you back. Can I use the same credit card?" Great. Phones her back. She goes, "Pizza will be delivered in 25 minutes or your money back. We put it on your card. Is that okay?" All done. And when she hung up and this whole conversation, this whole thing went down, he knew he had $1 billion business because that person knew the right thing to do was to make that customer happy. They didn't lose money. It was unconventional, but in that moment of truth, they were able to adapt. How many employees go, "We got to follow up, I'm sorry, can't got to follow policy,"
Of
instead of
course,
being
yeah.
human?
Yeah, that customer centricity and taking that to the nth degree of doing so, and you've got loyalty for life. A friend of mine always used to say she's been a senior HR consultant, runs a very successful business. She goes, you've made it when your customer calls you for something that apparently feels absolutely unrelated to what you do, but they called you because you're the first person they trusted. And she told me that years ago, and that's always stuck with me. And every once in a while, it happens. Someone will call me like, "Hey, this is weird, but I think I'm thinking about going here. I think you went there. Can you give me some of that?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And like, it's actually fun. I love those conversations. But every time it happens, I'm like, "Oh, nice, nailed it."
You know what it was?
Feels great. It feels great.
You gave. You invested. That's the give. You're
100%.
banking equity. Tony tells this really cool story. There's this young guy who is trying to be a realtor. I think you read I wrote it in the book, I think.
I read it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
go.
so
It's a good story. Please do tell it. I
yeah,
absolutely read it.
this
I absolutely read it.
realtor kid couldn't break into this really high net worth, neighborhood in Beverly Hills. Goes to Tony for advice,
It's a great story.
I was like, he goes, "Well, there's a garbage strike on right now. People got garbage everywhere. What if you were to just go and pick up all the garbage? Just pick it up. Don't tell anyone. Don't put a big sign out. Don't even advertise it. Just do it because that's the right thing to do." He did this for a couple weeks and without anyone noticing it. And one day, one person goes, "Hey, so is the city picking up now?" And he goes, "Nope." And he goes, "Oh, well, where are you from?" He goes, "Well, I'm the local realtor." "Well, why are you doing this?" "Well, because this is the neighborhood that I want to work in and I want it to be beautiful. It's a need that's there, so I thought I'd just take care of this." That literally sparked he to the number one realtor in Beverly Hills like wildfire. Nothing moves faster than word of mouth between people who trust when the storytelling is when there's a give and trust is there. That's extreme trust.
That's such a great story. And if you think of so many businesses, it's not that hard to do either, but it's hard to do if you don't have the right belief, like back to beliefs and core values. If you value that, your employees will make those decisions and make those decisions in real time. If you don't, and you rule everyone to death and you don't have that as your motivator, it almost looks impossible, I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that, with all the different employees and there's an ideological sort of like dream state that I'm referring to. It can't be achieved all the time. But when your general brand, you're rewarded for thinking differently, just human, about things. it can change the way that people view the company. You're not a transaction anymore. They're a brand that
Mhm.
they feel that you're that there's an affinity. It's like buy. It's I think that what's that buy versus buy-in. People don't buy from you until they buy in from you. I think that was the um, one of the famous rappers had that in a quote in my book, and that's the key. I think is you don't have to get it right all the time, but it's the intention. It's like if you're trying to like we're making the effort to create buy-in, right?
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, before people can buy from you, they've got to buy into you. It made me think of always like before people
Otherwise,
go
it's a
there.
transaction.
Yeah, for some, retail, no one's, before people can, they got to go there with their mind before they'll ever go there with their wallet. But I love this even more. It's going deeper. It's like they need to go there with their soul. They need to feel it, which isn't always an intellectual transaction either. And I think that human element, which is somewhat messy, and I think companies sometimes are scared of, maybe for good reason, but kind of at your peril. You need to lean into it a little bit because ultimately it's still humans doing business with humans. No matter how many layers of technology fit in between, I think we still all strive for that. More so, like you said, after the last few years.
What was an insight for me was I was really leaning into frictionless shareability, and that's a whole chapter I put in there,
Yep.
which is the idea of like the easier it is, the faster it is, the happier clients will be. And I took a experience economy expert course with Joe Pine. He got certified, and he really recalibrated me. What he said was he gave the example of Disneyland. If I go to Disneyland, I want it to be frictionless in line and getting in, but I actually want to slow down and have a time well spent once I'm inside. I would
I
ask
get.
any business,
Yeah, yeah.
is it time well spent working with you? Like, are you so busy trying to finish your boardroom meeting and your advertising marketing meeting, not making it a memorable experience where they feel like they barely want to leave? Think about that. It's think about when you need to be frictionless and when you need to be make it is it time well spent.
Oh, it's so powerful, and stop the glamorization of busy, which is something that I ran into the other day. Someone sent me that a meme with that joke on it. Because what doesn't happen is what you just when you're too busy to think about it or take that moment and take that breath and take that pause. You don't allow you got to allow a little bit of space for that to come in. And I get it. For some people, it's their natural tendency to give that way and provide that level of interaction and service. But for some of the rest of us, you got to take a little bit of a pause, and I think that that's okay. That pinch yourself moment of like, whew, am I rushing the wrong thing right now? And it happens. And I just give everyone the permission to admit that it's happening.
Yeah, it's yin and yang. It's like if you think of this is a very spiritual book. It's like it's not one or the other, and there's no one right amount. Think of working out. You know, it's people have this life work balance. You and I have talked about this, I think, once.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think it's like yin and yang is this perfect centered thing. And marketing and business is the same way. And sometimes you're consciously out of balance. I get that. Like you're working more, you're not providing more value to your clients at this time because of this. Like that's just normal.
Mm.
But it's when you're unconsciously out of balance that you got a problem. But when you intentionally know that the shift is going to happen, I knew when my book was done, I can now look at doing other things. It was consciously out of balance while I was writing the book. Makes sense. Like,
It
and I
does.
think that for business and when you think of your clients or anyone's thinking about any sort of delivery of clients, don't beat yourself up if you think that everything needs to be so zen and in balance. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. I'm a realist.
I was talking to somebody today and they're like, it's easy to forget to be compassionate with ourselves. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, if you could hear the inner dialogue, if you ever talk to anyone else that way, they'd walk out on you kind of thing. Hey, curious. And this comes back to a conversation you and I had maybe during COVID, let's just say a couple of years ago, where I'm curious of your own journey around spirituality. And I use that root very, very broadly because everyone can apply a different meaning to that. And you get in business, you get metrics and numbers. But what I'm hearing, and I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, you and I, one of us started, the other one's like, oh, you took the red pill, did you? You've opened up to that. How much is just your own evolution spiritually in how you connect to yourself and the people around you? How has that really influenced you in your role as a business person, entrepreneur, leader, husband, friend, human?
Yeah, I think of it like layers, right? I don't think it's something I lead with necessarily. It's not something that if, in business that's a core. sort of, I'm a spiritual marketing, a business,
No.
individual. But I'll tell you what I have done is I've been like, for example, I did this guru sing. I did this podcast, and I I was a little nervous about it because I thought I'm going to be a heretic. Like I'm going to be talking about I don't know what, like the universe and you know how to calibrate your colors with your chakras. I don't even know. It had this incredible. It was so good.
It's a
The
great
the
episode. It
dialogue we
wasn't.
had
Yeah.
that it did better than my Dave Navarro episode with Chili Peppers. And
Mhm.
in fact, he texted me, he goes, because he's never talked business. He's been a third generation yogi. He's world renowned, and we had such good chemistry. And he's like, "This is." I couldn't believe my phone's still blind. I'm like, "Mine too." I just assumed because it was Guru Singh, and I'm like, "This is amazing." And so we've been recording for over 25 hours, a series I'm calling Masterful Class. And what it is it's like long form of podcast. We're literally going through ideas, and it's like the most coolest thing. I get to sit down with him, and I'll talk about brand mantra. So, what's the feeling you want people to have at every interaction with brand? He's like, "Oh, mantra, the origin story of this," and we have this dialogue of the intersection of universe, nature,
Mhm.
spirituality, and its application to business. If you think you're in business and it's not about spirituality, you really are not seeing it in the way that is we spend more time at work. And if we really see that our life is filled with meaning and we can affect into people's lives, whether the business itself is a spiritual, if we're a spiritual being helping others and help the world become better, this can be part of our journey, if you will. And if you can embed that into your business in some way, shape, or form, at to whatever level you want, I think there's some really exciting things there. And so I've been exploring, well, what's the synergies? What are the patterns?
Mhm.
What's possible? And Tony Robbins has done a lot of work there as well. And so, energy. So I'm working with Master Co. I did his brand, and most people don't know this. I'm actually a level 4 pranic healer. I did it because I've he came to me to do his brand. I'm like, dude, I'm a chainsaw wielding, knuckle dragging, bacon eating dude. You want me to do your pranic healing brand? He's like, it's exactly what I want you to do because you can help me broaden my audience. So I'm like, cool. So I ended up doing all this stuff, and I realized there's a lot more here. It's the unseen things in a lot of components. And so energy, feng shui, is feng shui affect, advertising, marketing? If you look at crystals, most people, when I say the word crystal, they're having an adverse reaction right now that I'm talking. But think of the screen that you and I are looking on right now. It's a crystal screen. It's a form of communication. This is more pervasive than you can possibly imagine. You just don't want to admit it. So I'm just going, is there a pattern? What's possible? What's the alignment of different things that we can look at? And if nothing else, it's just an interesting journey. But what I am finding is there's some patterns, and it's freaking interesting. These 24-hour sessions I do with Guru Singh will blow your mind.
I love the idea of patterns and taking the time and being curious. How much does curiosity play a role for you? Because I would say from the outside, you're in the top echelon of curious people I know by your willingness to go in and open mindedly, just unpack and go like explore. You're a bit of an explorer. I love that.
Totally. And I think it's with one little, like, eye lens, it's because I'm so obsessed over the idea that marketing is so important to people's dreams and to be free of the systems, free of, if they can create something sustainable, they can have more time with their family, and how much more could
Mm.
that affect their lives or have the income that they need to do good in the world, and marketing is a major lever. So I'm obsessed over that integration, whatever it is, and new frontiers of what that's gonna look like. If I told you 10 years ago there would be meditation rooms in businesses, most people would laugh me out of the room. Not so weird now.
No kidding. Yeah, yeah. You West Coast hippie bullshit. Come on, what are you talking about?
Well, it's like, well, what's come forward, right? Steve Jobs,
100%.
what's the hedge manager, the biggest hedge in the world? He says he's applied it all through meditation. It's the stillfulness. It's like the center point. It's about inner calm. It's all these things can contribute to creating incredible growth for your business. We just are so focused on the consumerism, junk food thinking that's in our current culture that's been, it's been paraded around 10x grow now, and that's the only way that success exists. And I think when we shift in the world's mindset a little bit about impact, how many lives are we helping? What's our good that we're doing in the world? How does this connect with my values? Because you're looking at the younger kids now, they don't care about the money that you and I did. They're going, "Are you aligned with what I'm aligned with? If you're not, I'm not working here."
Yeah,
I
no,
think that
that's
I have a
100% true.
lot of hope with the new generation. Most people give them the scourge of they don't know what's going on. I think they're smarter than us
Oh, every
in
generation
in the
is done
way
is
of
yeah.
knowing the outcome of that they want out of life.
Every generation has looked at the new generation and been, "Oh my god, it's a dumb." That's such an annoying narrative. I have
Yeah,
very
it's a
little
stupid
use for
narrative.
that.
But
It
I'm
it just
really
it
excited
this
by the way
happens
this
over and over again, and
useful
it never
thinking is
pans out.
exciting to me.
Yes, useful thinking. So let's talk about the journey. The book is awesome. Please pick it up. We're really unpacking it, but you got to read it. There's so many great quips. I got like pages and pages of notes that I took while I was you reading it.
Well, let me
What's
ask you,
what's what
what
what's oh go
what
ahead.
changed for you when you read the book? If there's anything that changed that you went, "Oh, I'm gonna do this."
That's a really good question. I think it brought me back to some of the fundamentals around purpose driven, and I look at some of the original companies that I created and how bought in I was to the value that I was creating and how close I was to it, and how over time it's easy to get caught up in the numbers and the HR policies and the realities of running a business. And I'm not faulting any of those things, but they can become very distracting. And I think even through COVID, I came back to a lot of the things that I had maybe forgotten about why I was doing it. And our company, we had the best year in 10 years last year. The culture is better, the team is happier. But I shifted what was important and what was not and got out of the weeds of the annoying bits that are there and they're part of it. And your book was, I would say, more confirmational around like, yeah, you need to keep doing that. So it more reignited that fire of like, yeah, okay, you've had a good experience the last year and a half, 2 years. Where can you go with that? And your book really kind of lit that up for me a little bit.
So I'd ask the audience this: when was the last time you beat the alarm clock, you got up, and you couldn't wait to start your day? And for most people, it'd be like a lot of my days before I was doing what I was doing was the surf was up, I'm going snowboarding, I'm going on vacation, a lot of energy and passion there. You can't wait to start the day. If you knew there's a way that you could build a life and wake up like that, that's what Groundswell is about. How to wake up and literally come out of bed so stoked because you're living for something much bigger than yourself.
As much as I'd like that to be our mic drop moment for the episode, I still have more things I want to
Oh,
ask
we're
you.
still going.
I know, but I'm like, that was so perfect, Scott. That was so good. I got up this morning at 5:15 ahead of my alarm and read the rest of your book. So for that
Oh, that's
shameless
cool.
plug
That's
for
a
your
good
book,
story.
yeah, I made an espresso and I couldn't wait. I was like, fresh copy and coffee and the last couple chapters of Scott's book. Where are we going next? So you're already talking about the second book. I know you're spinning up some courses, some ability to kind of scale this, get it out and get it in front of more people, which then means more impact, more give. Take us a little bit on the journey. What's the road ahead look like?
Yeah, it's really simple, to be honest with you. I'm building a community, and the community is going to be for, I'll call them mindful marketers, impact creators, brave brands, soulpreneurs, SOUL soulpreneurs, ones that really want to create a soulful business, but maybe they want to work on their own. These are the kind of avatars where they want to come somewhere and have coaching mindset, courses, training, and connect with other people that are on a journey. My goal is to create a community where it's not like a course where like, oh, I did that course. It's like, no, I'm all in. Like this is I'm building a groundswell. I'm making an impact, and this is my people that we're gonna in it together. It's the idea of like we're in it together and we're all learning. I don't have all the answers. My book was a beginning. Like there's going to be so many people applying what I'm doing and modifying it and teaching me what to do. So to me, I want to create an accelerator environment and a supportive environment and gain access to me. And for me, shifting out of working this work I do one-to-one, I do six-figure brand strategy, direct work with clients, and be able to do that and create more impact. So my number one goal is to create this community, Groundswell, Inner Circle, and shift into more of a role of leading, supporting, and accelerating and marketing all these people that are doing good.
So basically, I'm really seeing that as a two-sided platform because you're going to have companies in there that can provide value. You have companies, organization, individuals that are looking for value. It really becomes that center point all around this philosophy of build, give, grow, transform.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of communities. And I would argue if you can build a community, you need to have you need to all be on a journey together, a voyage together, I call it.
Mm, okay.
And you need what do you stand for? What do you all collectively like? What do you all carry the torch for? What's your must have, do, be? And so if you believe that there's a hopeful future that you could create sustainable growth for you and your family and future generations, you want to be sovereignly in control of your life and be able to, you know, there's enough books written about how to get rich quick. There's I mean no there's like a sea of them. And if that's what you want, go there. But if you wanna make impact and you're willing to be on the journey, I don't see this ending for me and me tapping out and going surfing and never working again. This is a mission for me. I
Mm.
see me doing this till I'm dead. I want to
I love
affect
it.
22 million entrepreneurs to be sovereignly free from a sustainable growth business that they build through this platform. It's a big
Ooh,
vision.
where's the 22 come from? That's a very specific number.
22 has like been my magic number.
Nice.
I bought my Porsche on February 22nd, 2022. At 2 o'clock, at 2:22, I literally hit the button at that time. Um, 22 is I think when I was a little kid, was like, when you think like, "I'm gonna win," the lottery ticket, and for me, it was for whatever reason, it was 22.2 million dollars. And so the number 22, it keeps coming up for me all the time. In fact, my book price is gonna be $22.22. Um, I tried to do the early offer for $2.22. Like they have like a little period of time that to get sort of
Yep.
the digital sales, but that's regulated by 99 or 299. You can't do the 22. But anyways, that number just has meaning to
The
me.
thought that counts at
Yeah.
that point. Interesting. So 22 million, in fact, 22 million entrepreneurs. Uh, Process of getting like back to the mechanics. You're building this. You've got community. You're not building. You said you have over 30 different communities. You've got this book now. How do you go about getting it out there? Has that already been? Is there a huge pull? Is it going to be? I'm just curious of the mechanics. People going, okay, great. We've all heard of write a book, do speaking, and that's your strategy. Talk to me about your version of where you go with this amazing piece of content you now have.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is it's a marathon. The reason it took so long and why this book that you said at the beginning was felt foundational, I intentionally wanted to be I didn't put a lot of examples in it so that it could all be done in the workbook and I'm creating in the community. When you own the book,
Oh,
you
nice.
get
Yeah,
access
yeah.
to the live version of the case studies and a workbook. So it's like a living sort of book experience. This book is foundational. It's like a textbook. So to me, my goal is to get this into as many hands as possible to change the way marketing is done. Truthfully, my goal is to transform business as usual into business as beautiful. Meaning, how can business not be interruptive and be captivating? I mean, you think of something like a flower, it attracts hummingbirds because it's beautiful. Why can't business be that way? And I feel like because it's such an attention arms race, that that's why we've kind of in this loop. And I think that businesses that stand out, if you notice that businesses don't have to shout, there's a lot of businesses that are very successful. They don't have to shout, and they're quite the way that they create a customer experience and what they do, and they're growing naturally, sustainably, exponentially. I believe that this movement is what I'm trying to promote is a different way of marketing and almost like leaving any interruptive marketing as almost like junk food and like smoking.
I love the smoking comparison. And I'm only asking this just for the sake of the devil's advocate. The people that would say, you're idealistic. That's great. That's pie in the sky. That's not real business. That's not how I'm just saying this just to get your
Mhm.
response. I want to be
Totally.
really clear. Cause there's some people listening to that statement that said, yeah, that sounds great, but that doesn't work in my business. You don't understand what I need to go through with my customers, so on and so forth.
What's my answer?
Yeah.
So you have a son or daughter, and they're trying to walk, and they fall down a couple times, and you go, you know what? You're just not a walker. Don't even bother.
Forget about it.
Just forget about it. It's not for you. Clearly, it's not. It's like really, like we need to set the bar. If we want to change the world, if we're going to leave generations better than us, we need to aim higher. If I'm only half right or 20%, then I've moved the needle. To me,
Yeah.
that's like if that's the legacy I leave, great. Sure, it's idealistic, but I believe I've already transformed businesses that have given them permission where they were like, "This makes sense. I feel better about marketing this way. This feels more me." I'm like, "Isn't that already making an impact in terms of, like, how people are general happiness, if that's the effect?" So for me, I don't really know, that someone can say that, "Sure, one day we would love to not have war, but if we give up and go, let's just, who cares? We're always gonna have war." Then we're not moving, we're not progressing. We're not really thinking differently about how are we gonna evolve as humans to make this world a better place for the kids behind us.
I appreciate that. We talked a little bit about the role COVID played in kind of creating a bit of a paradigm shift and uh, pushing and prodding and manipulating our way we've always thought or the way we've engaged. It really broke. It was a good pattern
It was a
interrupt
great pattern interrupt.
for lack of a way to say anything better. What else do you see now that we're on this journey? What are the kind of paradigms that show up for organizations that create a little bit of space for them to even get curious about this? Is it a financial impact? Like, is it a recession? Like, is there things from like the outside, the left hooks we talk about in business, or is it something that's just somebody, nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come? What do you see as some of the external factors that motivate companies to kind of get on this path? We had COVID. We maybe have a recession coming down the road for, I would argue, for the companies that are not living what you're talking about, there's a recession coming. For the ones that are, I see it as a little bit less actually. But what's your view on the paradigm shifts that kind of get this going and light this fire for different organizations of all different sizes?
Yeah, I think it's the bottom line. So, if you think of Patagonia, do they have a good bottom line? What's their brand valuation? When you think of how
Mm.
businesses are evaluated, it's based on business performance and brand awareness or
Brand
trust or,
value.
or
Yeah,
affinity
brand
for
value.
brand, right?
Yep.
So you have two shoe companies. Company A, they both companies shoot the exact same shoes. Everything's the same, profit margins, everything, but one thing, one's Nike. Which one is a better value? When you start seeing businesses that have the higher valuations because the level of trust, affinity, sustainability, I believe sustainability is the chocolate shake, and the impacts that we're talking about are the green smoothie. When they see that sustainable growth, such as subscription models, the valuations of businesses with subscription models are vastly different than ones that are on
Yeah,
anything but.
that's a good
That's an
example.
example. We're already moving in that direction. It just hasn't arrived yet in the way that people want. And they're neglecting the idea that shareholder value is based on the current quarterly earnings. What's going to shift is when long-term investors and the public, they see the support for public, the future earnings, total lifetime value. That is when I think it's going to shift.
I really love your comment around, just the evaluations. Why does this company evaluated? You've got this EBITDA, you've got that EBITDA, but your model is evaluated instantly at a higher multiple. And there's a lot to be said for that because it really depends on how you even position yourself or what kind of a business you are, how that valuation shows up back to a sustainable model, which is a subscription, constantly reoccurring value, which then equates the client's or the customer's willingness to consistently give you money month over month.
It's
Yeah, that's
think of you
interesting. But yeah,
because you got
I
someone to
got
buy your business. Okay, anyone that's listening here, you've got anywhere from like a under $500,000 to a 10, $15 million business. That's a huge swath of people.
okay.
If you go to
You're talking top line. You're talking top line revenue.
top line revenue
Okay.
and you go to sell your business, If you have, hey, I have completely sustainable systems. I have recurring growth at this growth rate. My marketing dollars could go down if I wanted to and still maintain growth rate. Or, we're constantly iterating and we're creating multiple sources of income or value or lead sourcing, which is all what I'm talking about in my book. That versus a company has the same level of earnings, there's no comparison.
In terms of what
There's
you're going to
no
get valuation
comparison.
wise.
You will
Yeah.
make more money in the sale of your business. So if you want to look at it from logic standpoint, why do people build systems like McDonald's franchise? It's so it can be duplicated. It's because value can be the if you think about the business, if I have an agency and I'm running the business and I'm the only brains behind it and I leave, that's why most agencies can't sell for massive
Oh,
multiples,
that is the crux of the agency business right there, right? The professional
right?
services model. Mhm. Is
But
it's not, it might be delivering great value, but it'll stop tomorrow because it's not sustainable.
you have a community, aka a pond. You have products that you're offering in there, or you have multiple sources of revenue that are systemized and systems to run the business, aka sustainable growth. You're in a totally different model, right?
100%. Yeah. Deep valuation. To pivot off maybe a little bit of attention here, talk to me about like sustainability in the way we're talking about it. And then there's sustainability as the movement. And then, there's ESG from a reporting perspective. And we're sitting in Western Canada as we have this conversation, which is a very resource focused business sector. And ESG, certainly the environmental piece has been playing a huge part. How do you see that playing into some of the shifts that are happening? Speaking about all the different energies and pushes and pulls that are driving companies to go, hey, we got to look at things differently. How much do you see, or do you come across that conversation around the I'll just call it the ESG conversation?
Yeah, there's a little overlap because of the use of the word sustainable.
Yep.
I, of course, am all in favor of anything that's sustainable for Earth, but not to the point where it doesn't make economic sense. And
Yeah,
I
that's
think
powerful.
that, you know, for me, my focus is on sustainable business models. Now, if you think of what I also said, which is people buy based on values, if your customer base values sustainability, might want to lean into it. If the trend is moving that direction, you might want to lean into it. Um, but is that required for a sustainable growth business? I would argue not necessarily.
Mm,
So
okay.
I'm not it a lot of people might read what I say and do and be like, "Oh, he's a super green guy." I'm I'm real for I'm in for families protecting their incomes and their livelihood for them and their kids and not being stressed out. That's really what I'm for.
Okay, I appreciate
So
that. I appreciate
it's
that.
to be clear, I'm a little bit of a knuckle dragging chainsaw yielding dude, but I also love the ocean and I don't like trash and I like sustainable things.
I've never seen you wield a chainsaw, but I look forward to it. I also grew up
That was my
with a
wife.
chainsaw in
I
my
can't seem to start the one that I just got. She's like, "Why?"
Well, I'll come over. We'll have some fun with it. Yeah. Anyways, benefiting today without compromising the future. Someone very succinctly, I said, "How would you define sustainability?" And that's what they said, and I really liked it. It was just the most simple, succinct, elegant definition of sustainability, which you can really get lost in. Is it green? Is it this? Is it wind power? And all the things that I think sometimes we jump to when we hear the definition. But being able to benefit today without compromising the future, that to me was powerful and does resonate a lot with what you're saying, because you see that give, if you're seeing that give as a compromise, you're missing the point that it actually is benefiting your future. And I'm hearing that, if I'm going to kind of interject my own between the lines of what I read and what I'm hearing you say.
Sometimes a business will go, "We can't afford bamboo hats, and we're not gonna be able to do it," and that's fine. That's called being consciously out of balance. Another client might go, "That's our clients will accept nothing less." I
Yeah.
really I take the stance of I don't it's not so black and white for me, right? Like, I really have a lot of forgiveness for people and just kind of it's just we're moving in the right direction. That's
Yeah.
all I'm suggesting. I'm all in favor of it gets better, not you're bad, you're good. There's no right or bad or good. And this ESG thing and are you green? Some of it's bullshit.
A lot of it's bullshit, or it certainly has been. I think we're getting better with our reporting structures. And depending, if you look at our energy sector, just to point them out, my wife works in that sector and is heavily involved in their reporting. And I love nothing more than being out east in Montreal and Quebec with family, and somebody makes a statement about the energy sector, and then I listen to my wife carefully and casually, but from a very educated position, lay out all the things that their company is doing to actually support and protect the environment and be sustainable in all of their actions. But yet, the story around that is not always very positive. So I do appreciate the balance between those two things, and we can always do better, but we're doing a lot better than we used to. I will put that out there.
I think
My little
judgment,
plug
like,
for the
why
For the energy sector.
think of like this, everything I'm saying, even what I'm suggesting, is without judgment. Like, I think people need to drop the judgment and have a curiosity, like we were saying early on, like, and just go,
Yeah.
you know, why is that wrong and right? What's right for me? What feels right for me? We all intuitively know, like, deep down, we know. So why don't we just start leaning more on that?
I love it. Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah, love it.
A quote last night, which I love and I followed up on: "Be curious, not judgmental." Walt Whitman quote that they dropped in the episode last night. All of a sudden, I was like, "Whoa,
Is
wait,
there new
that was."
episodes out?
No, I'm late to the game, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
blasting through. I'm
I
I'm
was
I'm in the
excited there for a minute. I was like,
yeah.
oh my
No,
goodness.
man, it's great. But be curious, not judgmental. Just a simple
Yeah,
statement of how eloquent that statement is, and Walt Whitman obviously carries a little bit of weight there.
I think that's
But
such a great way to approach, business and how to see the future, right?
yeah.
Is what could you do if together? So this is another sort of, unique take on Groundswell. It's most entrepreneurs feel fairly alone, right? That's why
Oh,
you've
yeah.
done a good job of kind of pulling the community and stuff with the local community, and you're part of my community so that you and I can talk together. That's so great when
Mhm.
entrepreneurs can do that. But the entrepreneur journey is fairly lonely.
It's notoriously lonely.
Yeah, and I really feel that there's this other level, and it's this level is compounded growth because good begets good, meaning you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble of like-minded individuals, and you wanna support each other. That's like a village. That's like a local community. It's kind of like that's what we're doing on the internet with trusted circles, back to what we started with, and that I believe that that is the new way that exponential growth will exist, because right now, all the economic waste is your marketing, I'm marketing, Joe's marketing, Jane's marketing, all individually. We're not collectively marketing. I think that you're gonna start seeing
Hmm.
sort of a little bit more of the collective mindset when we all share the same values. Our customers is shared between us. Now you're going to see, I think, a convergence of groundswells kind of like working together, or groups working together. And I think that collabs is an example of that. The rise of collabs. Martha Stewart, Snoop Dogg. Nothing's
Totally.
lost to me because those are two audiences,
Yeah.
right? To sell one product that would never talk to each other, but yet
That
together
that
it's like
that's such a
it's like Reese's Pieces. It's like
amazing
peanut butter and
completely.
chocolate. Perfect,
Uh,
right? So
oh, well, they do have some common ground. I think past convictions maybe, or some time
yeah, yeah,
inside.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know.
exactly.
Anyways, they could
That
have
might be a
some
loose example, but you know what
prison
I'm
yard.
saying is
No,
like I
I
think
love
there's a
it. I love it. But what that also comes from, and I believe this fundamentally, abundance versus scarcity mindset. You
oh
have a
yeah, there
scarcity
you are.
mindset. Everyone is your enemy. Everyone's your competitor. That's total bullshit. Well, it might be true. Sorry. I don't think it's effective, but if it's true to you, I guarantee it's a lonely place to be. 100%. Mhm.
That's what really was troublesome for me when I was working in the Calgary community is how
Mhm.
and then this is a broad comment, so I wanna be careful my Calgary friends don't get too upset about this, but, you know, I was so focused on, like, everywhere's my potential client, not just Calgary,
Yeah,
and if you really think about the world that we live in with the internet and all the things that's available, it's not like someone loses. It's an infinite amount of abundance to be created.
agreed.
And we're getting spiritual, a little bit of energetic here. It's like if you really believe that you can manifest anything's possible in terms of outcome, impact, and abundance, and if you can create abundance while making impact, and you believe it to be true, you probably will make that happen.
Yes. Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Right.
It's knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a Yoda quote in there. I think somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the patience not is knowing. It's you just
Yeah.
know. How many there's this story. There's this guy, I can't remember what his name is. He's famous. He was for I think 20 years. He went to he's in Florida and he was looking for this lost treasure of some Spanish lost gold. They didn't
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
some gold, right? It took him 20 years. And in the first 10 years, his son died on an expedition.
I,
I think
I I don't know who this is, but I know this story as well. Yeah. Yeah.
there's like all these things that anybody would have quit long ago, but he knew there's something unknowing. He just knew that, and he ended up finding one of the largest finds in the world. And most people would never last for that. You see those cartoons, and someone's just like one pick away from finally breaking through, and it's so true. When we think about if we just know that we're doing the right thing, and in this moment, the challenge is probably a gift to become better, to do better, to realign, to rethink in business and in life, then this is the knowing of just keep moving forward gives you this propellant of energy of growth and continuation that I think is really more powerful than any business model you can have as a business owner.
Hmm. Well, it becomes a paradigm and a context, not just a business model that's outside of you, because you are a part of that model. And I think that's the holistic side of this that I think for larger companies or people I know that work in large organizations, sometimes it feels like it gets almost squashed out of them. They might have that or they might have that drive, and where the solopreneur and the small company, and there's so much opportunity, which I think to your point, we're kind of going back to our roots. Everybody was a solopreneur in one way or another at a certain time. If you look in our history, that wasn't that long ago. This new phenomenon of the industrial age kind of switched to this company model. Before that, and I know there were some hardships, but there was a lot of more of personal journeys there than there maybe. I love how, because you and I were kids, saying you were an entrepreneur would put you in like a remedial program. It wasn't a cool thing to say. But in the last 10 years, the last 5 years, that shifted significantly. And not because it's easy or not because there's high risk, but because there's a level of reward there. Same reason we started back at the beginning of the podcast. If you're like, I just can't do it, I got to do my own thing. It's just, I can't, it's not palatable.
Except for now, I'd argue the pendulum's gone a little weird.
Okay.
Entrepreneurialism is made into this, um, fantasy in some ways of this lifestyle. And I start my days, this, 3 a.m. and here I am, what is it? I'm a solid 12 hours in right now. That's a normal day for me. I'm 12, 13, 14. As an entrepreneur, it's a lot of work. And
Mhm.
the fantasy that people are now pursuing, I love that entrepreneurialism has now risen to the top. The problem is there's the sell of be an entrepreneur and you'll be free and you'll be on a beach and all this kind of stuff. And that may be true. And there may be business models and things to do it. But I think the true meaning of being an entrepreneur, the true essence of the word of being an entrepreneur is you're on a spiritual journey of sovereignty, working for yourself. That feeling that you're command of your own ship. You're
Mhm.
affecting change. You're aligning things and creating new worlds on your own terms. That to me, the voyage of the story I think I put in my book about going around the point where what's his name had this famous ad, for return unlikely, terrible
Yeah,
conditions,
yeah, yeah.
all these things, and but
Shackleton. Mhm.
glory be yours if you succeed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
An
Shackleton.
entrepreneur is like a gladiator. You go in the ring, you could die, but you go in. That's an entrepreneur.
Well, the gladiator story, someone's pushing you in with a pointy stick on the other end, but that's maybe where that one falters. I agree with you, and I agree with that sell. At the same thing, I still think it's a small price to pay to pull people into the paradigm that there's other options out there. And you're right;
Totally.
it's funny, and you did it like, and I was on a panel with some entrepreneurs, and they all got really like, oh, it's hard and it's terrible. I'm like, yeah, but yet you're all doing it. So that's like, it's like everyone was there trying to sell how risky and dangerous it was, well, yet everyone on that panel hadn't worked for anyone else for over 10 years. It's a funny paradigm that happens. And I
Interesting.
think
Yeah,
it's
so it goes
it's
both
great to tell.
sides, right?
It does. It's
I was given the
polarizing.
side of like it's so, like it's this easy thing. And you're right. There's a lot of people that are going, you know, like almost I think it's a bit of a badge of honor, like saying I'm so busy.
Oh, the stop the glamorization of busy. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. You're right. I
And
slept 2 hours and I've been up since 3 and doing all, and not, I think Ariane Huffington's got a great book on sleep, which I read a
yeah,
bunch
and
of
I
years
can make
ago,
sure I
which
get my
helped shift
sleep.
my paradigm on that. Yeah, me too, for
100% on
sure.
that. You
Because
know,
what you didn't tell people is you're getting up at 3, but you're not going to bed at 1.
I go to bed at 8,
Yeah, yeah, it's
7:30, 8 o'clock.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah. So
nice.
I'm getting a good night's sleep. Um, but that's another interesting point. It's the other side of the coin, right? Which
Yeah.
is, you know, it really, why am I doing this? I love it. It's like, why not? I
Nice.
feel
Yeah,
so sorry for anyone that's listening that's not doing what they love. They go to work and they're like, this sucks. That's an
yeah.
entrepreneur is going, what would you love to do? Who
Yeah.
could you serve? And most people try to think about what you can make money with. I think that's wrong. My
Mhm.
philosophy is this.
Well, you're chasing the wrong demon, yeah.
Who would you wake up in a bed like Count Dracula, snap of a finger, get up, and you'd love to serve and take care of? That's Go pursue that. That's your audience.
Mm.
You'll find a way. You'll find a way to make money, right? And
No,
that's
that
why I
is
love the impact
yeah.
creators. They're like these amazing humans. They're just like, I'm gonna make a change in the world, and
They
they're
make money
smart and
almost as
savvy. Like, I love
they
it.
make money to spite sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
Like a
some of them are
massive
victims. Some of them feel like healers and stuff are notorious for like, I don't want to charge and like
yeah,
people that
back
are
to the
holier than
business.
thou that they're trying to like I'm not down with I mean, I have nothing against nonprofits, but I'm just saying I'm for profit. I'm like, let's make a heck of a lot of money. The more money
Because
you
then
have, the more
yeah.
impact you can have.
Oh, we can get
Let's
into
be
the whole
clear.
paranoia,
This is about
making
making a lot of money.
yeah, because the impact you can have can be exponential, and the broken. And I have a lot of respect for the non for profit sector, but I do believe a lot of times it's broken because they play small with how low can we keep our expenses, how little can we pay our staff. You then by default get to have less impact at the end of the day versus having an organization that focuses on we're going to be the biggest best at solving this problem, so therefore we need the smartest people, we need to pay them the best, and then therefore we'll get the most donations. And Dan Pilata, I don't know if you ever run into him, he's got a great philosophy where he really breaks down the fundamentals of why the non-for-profit let's run it as cheap as we can model is completely broken when it comes to if impact is actually your goal, which fits into a lot of what we're talking about today. Mhm.
I have a friend of mine. Her name's Sarah. She's known on Instagram. Go check her out. Called Vertical Blonde. And she tells me the story. The story tells me is the day she really felt free was when she ripped up her um, she's in a wheelchair, and when she ripped up her check from the government. So that
Mhm.
actually held her back, her mindset, the idea that it's just there. And this dependency and thinking of think of government dependency or nonprofit dependency and not thinking creatively. When you move into a creative your creation, think of like people that believe in God and just anything in the universe, even plant life and everything. It's all about creation, it's about growth, it's about evolving. When we're in a state of creation, it's amazing what happens. But when we're in a state of dependency, it's scary what happens. And that's what I think is scary about what's going on in the political environment, different things. And that's why I think sovereignty is so important is it creates this creative thinking. Entrepreneurs find a way to grow like a weed. You see those ever see those trees or weeds and you're like, how is that tree growing out of that rock?
Yes, I yeah,
The
totally.
will to grow. Love that.
Yeah.
That's who I'm talking to.
I was in West Coast for I was up in East Souk for about a week and a half, just in early December, and we did lots of hiking and lots of beach times, and like amazing rugged. You know that
Yeah.
environment well, as you. I know you're a fan of Tofino and Ucluelet, and the things you see growing in those environments where things grow to defy because it's such a rich environment. It's coming straight out of a cliff, straight out of a rock somewhere. A bird or the wind blew it there, and it decided to grow anyways, despite everything saying it shouldn't. And I saw that so much. My wife and I commented, "I'm like, look at that growing right there!" Like the metaphor of what's possible is very powerful in that, especially on the West Coast where things just seem to take on almost a mystical energy to themselves.
I give the example of also growth in rainforest versus drought. If you think of a rainforest, when times are good, money's easy, clients are easy, you don't grow deep roots, right? You don't get not
Yep.
very resilient. But you find a
Yeah.
tree that's has intermittent watering, it has elements, they tend to have very deep roots, challenges, problems. Don't view your problems as being a problem. View it as an opportunity to get better in your business, make it more resilient, stronger, and strengthen your systems. So many people are complaining; they don't realize it's a gift.
I have your next podcast guest, by the way. Aaron Volpati played NHL, played for the Washington Capitals, massively third to 4 degree burns on 50% of his body at 19 years old. 6 months later, he was playing at Brown on a full college
Wow.
scholarship. And he talks about, and he now runs a business around visualization and cognitive visualization therapy, and talks about how he looked at every single one of, and then got actually forced out of the NHL through a debilitating neck, like just one after another. But every time it happened, he turned it into the most driving, motivating, powerful experience of his life. And basically, just every day he had one thought, which was to get this scholarship. And the story around, anyone else, so many people, I shouldn't say anyone else, could have given up with the degree of burns, and you're 19 years old, you're just like the bravado, and you get taken down. And what he turned it into, it was a powerful conversation. He just put out his new book, and I had him on the show yesterday, but he just resonated with me as you said that. As I
Well,
listen
I'm
to this guy, as I'm
interested to
in
read
awe
that.
listening to these stories. Yeah, I'll connect you guys. He's a interesting guy at lives in Vernon.
You know, anyone that's listening, like re-listen to that last little bit, how he's turning these challenges into the greatest gifts. That right there is the journey, the spiritual journey of the entrepreneur. Is if you look at these challenges as a gift, right? Like the fact that I'm getting out of bed excited and working these hours, it's a gift. I'm like, what if I wasn't motivated? What if I wasn't excited? You know, the problems that exist today, instead of pointing at them, going, how can I create a business to solve it? It's going to take us solving these problems. They're gifts.
Well, and therein lies the opportunity, because there is no endless amount of gifts to be solved.
Yeah, you know who doesn't have problems? Dead
Dead
people.
people, dead people. That's totally.
It's
I was like, there's only one I can think of.
well, it's like, that what's that quote? Business would be so great if it wasn't for customers. You
Yes,
know,
yes.
it's
I,
like,
I may have made that joke from. I'm guilty. I'll put my hand up for that joke.
yeah, and it's
But
customers,
without them, we look pretty foolish, don't we?
yeah, it's like there can be customers that it's, and I realize that when I've allowed, it's like been my compromise that has allowed the situation to occur, is usually, I look at it, it's on
Oh,
me,
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
and I'm just paying the price for not setting boundaries or being clear or communicating or not delivering. I'm guilty of all of those.
The culpability and the ownership, and so much of what we're talking about today, and whether it's curious without judgment, or a lot of the catchy lines we've been using, so much of it comes from a place of self-awareness, to be okay to go, oh yeah, and you talked about it early, being a bit forgiving, going, yeah, I'm on the journey, I'm learning, maybe I can't do the bamboo hats, but that self-awareness that comes around, versus the negative dialogue that can fill its place, which I would say holds you down and pulls you back, versus like, oh yeah, no, I guess, yeah, I'm human, that happened. Like, that level of self-awareness of, hey, there's a thing that keeps recurring in my life, I need to work on that and fine tune it so I can bring it forward. So much of this, what we're talking about, or that next level of self-actualization, a little bit of mirror, a little bit of peer coaches, good friends in your life, people that you can bounce stuff off of. I think that is critical, back to the lonely journey of being in business. Part of that self-awareness story does, I think, sometimes need to be presented from the outside, but you need to be open to it when it shows up.
Mhm.
Or the same barricade, the same roadblocks keep being the same roadblocks. And then you tell a story about the roadblock, why it's not your roadblock and the world is doing something to you. And that narrative I found to be very unsupportive over the years.
Yeah, the stories we tell ourselves to
Yeah, we're
convince us that
experts.
we're right, right?
Experts. Because not being right is really uncomfortable. I've been taught that not being right is actually, I'm doing something wrong, I'm failing.
Mhm.
That, wow, I love how we're really digging and opening up the layers of, you're right. The stories we tell ourselves. I'm a master storyteller about my own bullshit.
We do, and we just, what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid pain, and it creates a level of certainty, human need, which is certainty, right? And we feel it's our emotional home. When we feel safe, sometimes being a victim with these thoughts, these
Yeah, yeah,
ideas.
yep.
So it's easy for people to go, yeah, that COVID almost killed my business, or, oh yeah, I know customers, they're unruly, whatever. Even entertaining those energetic conversations, you're already going down the wrong path. And you start catching yourself and you start thinking differently. And so, to me, I notice the people that are incredibly successful, they're very careful with the words they use. They
Mm.
don't say hope, they go when. When I succeed and do that, when I reach 22 million sovereign entrepreneurs, not I hope. I'm going to reach 20. Very
Mhm.
different energy. And
I've heard that
so
hope. I've heard that hope is not a strategy.
it's not a strategy. That's true. Yeah, that's a famous one. So, to me,
I
that's
love, I
words.
love, I love me a good catchphrase.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, me too. You got a lot of them.
Well, being years as being marketers and having curious minds and consuming lots of different content, which I think is really important. Like surround yourself with sources of inspiration. I love what you've done with your journey around Tony Robbins, and I can only begin to imagine the people. The Tony Robbins experience is just part of it. The people that you're meeting, the like minds in the room, the sources of it's so critical to surround yourself with sources of inspiration, like a podcast like this, like a book that you just wrote, and the millions of other great things that are out there. But keep doing it. Always make the time, because if you want to get it, we talked about a pattern, pattern interrupt or a break state. A good book, a good podcast, a good conversation with a friend, an inspirational event. That's how you break out of those paradigms and that way of thinking. And I'm a huge advocate of sources of inspiration, knowing that even if you're like, oh, that was kind of a waste, take one thing out of it. It wasn't a waste. That's my not so humble opinion.
I love it. Source of inspiration, circles of influence. They work together. The
Yep.
reason
Mhm.
for community and I basically want to be almost the Tony Robbins of marketing, because I believe mindset, the stuff that we're talking about, is a massive factor. I think business is 80% of psychology, right?
Oh,
Even customer
yep.
psychology and psychology of the language we use, how we approach problems, creative thinking. Anyways, to me, what you're mentioning there has been one of the biggest effects of my life. Who I surround myself around. The friends that are I call my friends, most of them have multi big businesses. Some of them, most of them have jets. They're pushing me to a whole different level of like, "That's all you got?" Like, when I told them 22 million, they're like, "That's it?" You know? And I'm like, "Hey, this is my goal." So, but to me, that is an important factor, and that's what the environment I wanna create in my community. And you bring up a really important point. You need to be if you're listening to this and you wanna be effective, you need to be listening and taking information from people who are where you want to be, not they're like, if you're taking advice from someone that's less successful than you about making a business decision, you need to reevaluate how you make
Oh,
decisions.
and that's Tony Robbins 101 stuff from looking way back. Find someone who's doing the thing you want to do, find out how they did it, model that, understand their thinking, how their mindset was, like kind of going back to some of, Tony's roots and kind of the NLP mindset and philosophy. I love that. And you're absolutely like, you are the company you keep and you are the thoughts that you share for sure.
Modeling, such a good
Yep.
word. Patterns
Yep.
and modeling. So first you identify patterns. So we see the patterns in marketing. Then we differentiate patterns. This marketing technique is different than the other. Then it's pattern creation. This is what I believe groundswelling is a new pattern creation. I believe in part of my whole groundswelling philosophy is you create your own pattern on your own terms. Fuck what everyone else thinks you should be doing and the systems.
Scott, we're 2 hours in before the first F bomb showed up. I think
I
that's really
know
good. That's great. Because if they're still listening, they're in, they're bought in, they're
they're
loving
in
it.
now,
They're
but
drinking your Kool-Aid.
there's such a truth to saying the fucking important time.
Yep, it
That
is.
this really is an important point. Is most people understand is sometimes the best marketing is you having the energy for it. So in my book,
Yeah, that's
we did
powerful.
ICE,
Yeah,
right?
powerful.
Impact, confidence, ease. That's a growth hacker's model for basically going, how do you make prioritized decisions about marketing? And you evaluate it based on 0 to 10 impact. On my goal, my outcome, my epic outcome, 0 to 10. 10 if it's great, 0 if it's not. Confidence. How confident am I can do this? 0 to 10. Ease. How easy is it to do it? Those three things have been the model for growth hackers for creating exponential growth. I've just added three more to ICE, which is identity, congruency, energy. You could do something, but if it's against your brand, meaning I'm a sustainable brand, but throwing oil on seals is against my brand, I probably shouldn't do it, right? You want to be
Probably
like,
not.
what's your brand identity, right? Congruency, not just technology congruency, it might be values congruency. Is this partner that we're working with congruent with us? Is I'm on Mac and they're a PC shop. Maybe this is it could be a technical one. The last and the most important, energy. Do you have the energy for this? If someone comes to me and says, I don't care about TikTok, I don't care about social media, but man, do I love writing letters. But everyone tells me I can't be successful. I'm like, write letters like the wind. You're going to be
Mhm.
successful. Follow the energy, but you have to balance the others as well. But it
Yep.
can't be just blindly spending energy. But I think it's such an important factor that gives people the freedom and permission to not follow the conventional marketing rules.
Well, it goes all the way back to what you said, like, with speed or direction. If you've got the energy and the right direction, that's where impact can truly come. That's where you
That's
can
when you
get
have a
into the
knowing.
yeah,
And
that
that's why the
yes,
build phase is so important
Hmm.
because you've done an active strategy like we talked about. You've tested and vetted, you've planned, you built an audience, you built demand, you already know the outcome. I call it spinning plates versus pushing dominoes.
Hmm.
Spinning plates is let's try new things and we're doing it. And it looks busy and yeah, that's great. But it's a very different energy when you I'm not spinning plates. This guy's already doing business. He's already making things happen. I'm still putting my dominoes together. That requires a level of patience until you put push. Have you ever seen someone who has got a very calculated launch for a marketing plan that like bing, 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 and just they took the time to build? Where other
Yeah.
people, it's like they frantically miss the opportunities because they were trying to do it too fast.
Oh, we celebritize speed so much in our society. It's an addiction for
It's an
sure, no
addiction.
question. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's an illusion. It's an illusion. Mhm.
and I'm not exactly about being slow. Anyone that thinks sustainable growth is slow is mistaking, but it
Yeah.
is a little bit of the tortoise and hare story, right? A little bit. I
Mhm.
think it's fast and slow. You do both.
Well, I think it's really good to clarify because, oh, if you're not fast, then you're slow. Well, let's define what we mean. Like we're not we're saying we're calculated and consistent. We're not fast and reckless. I think that's just, to add more weight to the word, because one isn't just the simple opposite of the other, right?
And you can be fast and going in the right direction.
Mhm.
It's possible, right? But I'd rather, given the choice of the two, which one do I want to have more weighting to? I'd rather be knowing I'm going in the right direction.
Hmm. One of my old coaches was an ex fighter pilot, CF-18 pilot, fought in the Middle East, and he said, he always used to say, it's all burn or no rudder. Anyone can go fast in a straight line, but in a dogfight, you don't do so well.
Mhm.
I appreciated that. I'm like, hey, anytime you want to work at fighter pilot analogy into our coaching sessions, please do, and he did on a regular basis. But someone would come up, he's like, sounds like all burn or no rudder to me, and I just love how we used to say it because it was with, there's someone who picks up a saying like me or a guy who lived the saying. Very different, very different.
Do you ever been, a part of a business that's so focused on that burn? Like there's an angst to it, like it's about act now, buy now. There's a bit of a whatever the energy of the business, of the way that they're offering is, it's like everybody. It's all about acceleration. Then you have another business that it's not that they're being slow; they're just deliberate.
Yes, I immediately
There's
have
a
two examples that come to
confidence
mind.
about that.
Immediately. Yeah. Yeah, no, I've one that was a smaller business and they took the time to do their brand. They took their time to work it out. And like years later, I get messages from both the owners, depending. And they'll be like, "Hey, just want to let you know, brand is still amazing. We just landed a deal. They went out of their way to tell us about the brand and the story that you created was amazing." And they halfway through, we had to do a name change. And we sat with them. I said, "Listen, like sacred cows." And they said, "You know what? You're the professionals. We hired you. We trust you. Let's work together. If this is what you think we need to do, we can do it." And the moment going into that meeting, I was like, "Oh, how's this meeting going to go?" And then I think of another company that we've done work with for years. It's fast, fast, fast. Get it out, get the campaign out. Like, on time, on task, on budget. The three varieties. And this company always values on time and on task second, and on budget is later. Which is nice to work with a company that will pay for the speed that they want, but they don't always get the results because the speed became the priority. Right.
Hmm
For
You
the
know,
sake of the deadline, not the sake of the outcome always. The outcome
yeah.
was the deadline, and we all know hitting the deadline, yes, can be a make or break in marketing, but if you miss the message and the customer, does it really matter that you were in market sooner?
Yeah,
It
doing a big
doesn't.
launch that doesn't land isn't gonna do you any good.
No,
What
it
you
just
described there
burns your
is you're
budget.
a very brave company, a founder,
Totally.
that it takes bravery to do this.
Not for the weak of heart.
No, this isn't. There's a lot easier things to do, right? And you could sit at home on the couch, but there's people climbing mountains.
You can sit at home on the couch, watch movies about the people that are climbing mountains.
Right. And
And with my affinity for heights, I'm going to take that option in this specific instance.
yeah, well, there's a time and place, like to
100% there is. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I took that way literal. Scott, we're pushing 2 hours. This
yeah.
is the longest podcast I've done in a while. I love it. I love our ability to just have a good old, I love the art of a good old fashioned chat. And we've done that today in spades. While I think simultaneously allowing, hopefully, your audience who knows you. So a lot of people that are listening to this will probably very well aware of you and the journey that you're on, but to hear your philosophies and to hear what has evolved and how clearly and powerfully and passionately you articulate the journey you've been on and the passion around it. And I'm super inspired. And I really hope our audience today was able to get a little bit more connected and peer behind the curtains of Scott, which you did a really good job letting us in, man. Thank you.
Thank you for being my host.
It's my pleasure.
This was a nice switch for me to be a guest instead of a host. It's phenomenal, and I really wanted this story to come out on the cusp of this, my new community, the season 4, which is going to be phenomenal. And so I really appreciate you taking the 2 hours to really kind of like, really have me flesh everything, out a little bit. And I just want to leave with one last thought, and that is, if you're listening, think about on your deathbed late in life, are you going to look back and think, oh, I'm really stoked I was an entrepreneur. I worked extra hours? Probably not. Am I gonna be stoked I spent more time with my family? Probably yes. Are you gonna be fulfilled with the work and the time that you did when you're away from your family if it had an impact and you know that you left this planet and your namesake and your echo is making an impact? How are you gonna feel? To me, I'm focused on fulfillment. What is To me, that's a great guiding light a little bit. That's sort of tying together what this whole groundswell is about. It's I selfishly just want to be stoked in my late in life, you know. So I'm like working hard now.
But working hard with energy
Yeah.
that is self-perpetuating, it's like it's like a nuclear reactor that like the Iron Man. You've got the endless source of energy because you're tying it to something that is fulfilling, and that can't be underestimated. Like, oh, how do you do it? That's how. That is part of the how because it's tied to the why. To unpack that again.
So normally I get my guests to tell me their address and where they can find you. And I think that in this case, it's still a very much appropriate. You've got a
Oh,
couple of
thanks, man.
amazing podcasts. Why don't you give people a little rundown of where they can follow you? Because you've been an incredible host.
Oh, thanks so much, man. Well, please check me out, Tyler Chisholm on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's the one social media platform that I'm still openly very embracing, and I think it serves the community quite well, better than some of the others. But check out Collisions YYC if you're looking for a perspective on economic transformation in Calgary, Alberta, and Western Canada. In that order, we've got over 300 episodes of everyone from the startup entrepreneur who just got their first check to the mayor to leading oil and gas executives and the decisions they're making in their sector. But we aspire to engage and inform a diverse and inclusive Calgary economy, because if you don't know Calgary, this is a great way to go, whoa, there's more going on here than I probably let on. And my second one, which is my pure passion project, they both are, but this one even more so, they just get it, where it's the one that started off. I've been doing it for 4 years. I talk to people that travel the path less traveled in terms of for everything from psychedelic healers to women who survived cancer and now run vertically integrated grass-fed, grass-finished beef ranches in Alberta, to people that fly all over the world to fight forest fires and what's happening there. So if you're really curious about humanity and the many different paths that can be taken, I really encourage you to check out They Just Get It. And last but not least, I run a marketing agency that I love, and we have amazing clients. And this is where, as we clearly identified, where Scott and I connected years and years ago. Clearmotive.ca. Check us out if you're curious. We'd love to help you and talk about your business. So give me a call anytime.
Thank you so much. You're a true renaissance man. Like this guy is phenomenal. He's got this one saying, it's like life is the dash. What do you call it?
It's all about the
It's
dash.
all
Yeah,
about the
it's all about
dash
the
in
dash.
between.
You're born and you die on your gravestone, but what you do in between is what matters. Absolutely.
Right,
All
exactly.
about the
And you
dash.
racing bikes to, you're training your dog to stuff. You got a great Instagram. And thank you for being such a good friend. And thank you for being my guest on the show. And thank all of you for surviving 2 hours. We're almost on a minute and a half away from exactly 2 hours. So thank you for tuning in and sticking with us if you're here to the very end. And, until next time, I'll just have you say, please join our community at groundswellinacircle.com. And until next time, mahalo.